Tony Abbott, good morning.
Morning, Fran.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
I must say you looked stunned yesterday, really. Did you think you had the numbers when you walked into that party room vote yesterday?
No, I didn't. I knew I had a chance, but I certainly didn't expect it. And when Joe went out first, I suddenly started scribbling down some notes because I thought you never know what might happen.
Well, as you said yesterday, you entered the fray to kill off the emissions trading scheme bill. You didn't really expect to become the leader. You are the leader. Today, within 24 hours, your first goal will be realised. It looks as though the Senate, with your senators on board there, will vote down the Rudd bill.
That's my expectation.
Now, there is also a likelihood that a couple of Liberal Party senators will cross the floor and vote in support of the bill because they feel so strongly about climate change. Are you aware of that? Have they alerted you to that? And will there be any repercussions for that?
I've had some discussions with a couple of my Senate colleagues, and I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of them do go to the other side on this. But look, in our party, you've never had the kind of Stalinist enforcement that you've got in the Labor Party, and while it's disappointing always when one or two people don't believe they can follow the party line, particularly when it's got the authority of a secret ballot in the party room behind it. It's disappointing, but look, occasionally it happens, and there won't be any recriminations, no.
Have you asked them not to?
I've had a discussion, and I've put a viewpoint. They respect mine, I respect theirs, and we'll see what happens.
Now, Tony Abbott, you're the new Liberal Party leader. Let's explore your views on this important issue of climate change, which is at the centre of this argument right now. It's been pointed out that you've done a bit of a U-turn from where you were 4 months ago. Let's just remind ourselves what you told us on breakfast on this program in July.
This is a democracy, and you've got to respect the people's mandate. Now, the people gave the Rudd government a mandate to deal with climate change, and I think that has to be respected.
It was in July this year. You're just about to trash that mandate, aren't you?
Well, we were then, I think, still in a post-election period. We're now in a pre-election period. Their mandate, I guess, eventually expires and is replaced by our desire to provide the people with a contest, and that's what they're going to get under my leadership.
Yes, but also in July, in an editorial in an op-ed piece in The Australian, you seem to agree with Malcolm Turnbull that it was in the party's interests to allow the emissions trading scheme to pass, that the party would basically be almost wiped out if it didn't do that. What's changed in mind?
2 points. First of all, I was making a judgment about the politics of the situation back then. And second, and this is very important, I was trying to support my leader. And that's what front benchers do. They try to support their leader. But it would be quite interesting for you to read out the other sections of that op-ed piece, where I think you will agree, Fran, I was hugely unimpressed with an ETS on its merits.
You're also hugely unimpressed, I think it's fair to say, with the science on climate change. Just quoting you again, from the 7:30 report, this one, I'm hugely unconvinced of the so-called settled science on climate change. So you're not a believer, yet you are promising a strong, effective climate change policy. Why should anyone believe you?
Well, we do have to give the planet the benefit of the doubt, but we don't destroy the economy to save the environment. I mean, you can't have a good environment without a good economy as well. A good environment often requires expensive measures, which require a good economy to pay for them. So, look, we do have to have a strong and effective climate change policy, but it doesn't have to involve a great big new tax.
Why do you say we need to have a strong and effective climate change policy, though, if you're not convinced of the science?
Because, as I said a moment ago, Fran, we do have to give the planet the benefit of the doubt.
Let's just put to you the question Michelle Grattan just posed. I'm not sure if you heard it. She was speaking just before you joined us. She said Tony Abbott is not committing to an emissions trading scheme. Are you committing to an emissions trading scheme, which was your policy at the last election?
Well, there were lots of policies that we had at the last election that we are no longer committed to. And this idea that what we took to the last election is holy writ, never to be changed. There are all sorts of things so awful that I couldn't even mention their names on this program that we were committed to then.
Say work choices.
we were committed to then that we're not committed to now, Fran. But no, I'm not committed to an emissions trading scheme. I think that there are some good arguments for one, because it wouldn't have been policy at the last election if there weren't. But the right time for an emissions trading scheme is when the rest of the world is signed up for one. And that way, all the economies will labour under the same emissions constraints. I think it's probably folly for Australia to go down that path in the absence of the Americans doing so, because it's not until the Americans have such a scheme that it will really become a part of the international economy.
Is there a timeline on that position, though? I mean, just thinking with giving the Earth the benefit of the doubt, what if Obama can't get it through his Congress? Do we just do nothing then?
Well,
what about the planet?
If there are lots of other ways to help the planet without this great big new tax on families. I mean, it's $120 billion, and that's just for starters, Fran. Now, and that's just to get a 5% reduction in emissions. If it's going to cost us $120 billion to get a 5% reduction in emissions, how much is it going to cost to get a 50 or 60 or 80% reduction in emissions?
Do you still think that a carbon tax is a good idea? Let me just play you something you said on this program again back in July when I asked you whether you seem to be supporting the notion generally of a carbon tax.
If the simple challenge is to put a price on carbon, if you were to put a carbon tax on energy consumption, on fuel consumption, and if you were then to rebate that tax, I think that would have been a much simpler way of going.
Do you still feel the same way about a carbon tax?
I said I was.
Now you're the man in the hot seat.
I was talking hypothetically, and we have no policies and will have no policies for a carbon tax.
Just before I leave this issue, do you accept, though, that some kind of carbon price signal is essential in any effective climate change policy?
I'm not saying that at some point in the future, in the context of an overall global scheme in which Australia is going to be a good environmental citizen, that we can't have a carbon price. But we can do an enormous amount and will do an enormous amount to help the environment without slugging families.
Tony Abbott, I'm sure there's going to be many opportunities to talk policy with you in the future, but can I just touch on one issue that will come up, no doubt about it, in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. Border protection. Do you have strong views on where you would like to take the opposition's policy on border protection?
Well, I think that the changes that Malcolm Turnbull announced a couple of weeks ago are good changes. I think that we should insist upon having a special category of visa so that people who get here in an unauthorised way can't expect that they can stay forever. Can't expect that if they get here, well, then there's a whole chain of migration resulting from that. And we just have to say to the people smugglers that the great prize of permanent residency in Australia is not semi-automatically available to their customers once they get to Christmas Island or once they get onto an Australian boat.
Okay. Now, just a couple of quick ones before the news. You've said you will be collegiate. You'll try and heal the sort of rifts within your party. I know you've spoken to Shadow Treasurer Joe Hockey. Is he still your Shadow Treasurer, and will he remain so?
Well, that's my hope. I am reasonably optimistic, but look, I haven't spoken to Joe again this morning. And it would be wrong of me to further speculate until I've had that discussion.
And we're coming up to the news, but I really can't let you go before I ask the question the whole of Australia wants to know. Will your leadership duties affect your fitness regime? They've seen you recently in your swimmers. They see you in your bike gear. What's it going to do to your exercise regime?
It's probably going to have a bit of an impact on it, but I try to get most of my exercise very early in the morning, and I guess I'll just have to get up a bit earlier, won't I, Fran?
I wonder if we'll be seeing a super fit front bench anytime soon. Tony Abbott, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much.